Some songs don't get a fair shot the first time around. They get released, ignored, and quietly buried, and that's supposed to be the end of the story. But every once in a while, a song refuses to stay dead. It finds a second life, a new audience, a different moment in time, and suddenly everyone acts like they knew it was great all along. Today we're looking at 10 songs from the 1960s that flopped completely on release, and then somehow became worldwide hits. The comebacks on this list will genuinely surprise you. Light My Fire. Here's a fact that rewrites the story slightly. Light My Fire was released as a single in 1967 in its full 7-minute album version and initially got very little traction. Radio stations weren't interested in a 7-minute song. That wasn't how radio worked, and nobody at the label was going to fight that battle for a band that hadn't proven itself yet. The Doors were pushed to release an edited version, which they reluctantly did, and that shortened single eventually climbed to #1 in the United States. But the path there was far from smooth, and the original release was essentially dead on arrival. What makes this story interesting is the tension it reveals between artistic vision and commercial reality. The Doors wanted people to hear the full song, the extended keyboard solo, the guitar solo that builds into something almost trance-like, and the industry wanted something that fit between commercials. Both turned out to be right in different ways. The edited version made them famous, and the full version made them legendary. Jim Morrison reportedly hated the editing process and the compromise it represented, which is consistent with everything else we know about how he approached the music industry. The song has now sold tens of millions of copies across multiple formats and generations, which makes the original struggle to get it on the radio feel almost absurd in retrospect. Unchained Melody. Before the Righteous Brothers made Unchained Melody one of the most recognizable ballads in history, before Ghost turned it into a generational touchstone, it was a song that had already been recorded dozens of times and never quite broken through in the way it deserved. Al Hibbler released his version in 1955, which predates the 1960s, but the song spent the following decade being covered repeatedly by artists who each failed to make it stick internationally. So much for you. It wasn't until the Righteous Brothers recorded their version in 1965 that the song finally found its definitive form, and even then, it wasn't originally the A-side of the single. The label was betting on another track, and Unchained Melody was almost an afterthought. What happened next was one of the great reversals in pop history. Radio picked up the B-side, audiences responded immediately, and the song climbed the charts on both sides of the Atlantic. The combination of Bill Medley's deep opening and Bobby Hatfield's soaring finish created something that felt genuinely cinematic without needing a film to make it so. The ghost of all those earlier versions, the ones that tried and fell just short, makes the Righteous Brothers' success feel even more earned, like the song had been waiting patiently for the right performance to finally set it free. Oh You Pretty Things. David Bowie recorded Oh You Pretty Things in 1971. Oh, you pretty things, don't you know we tried? But here's the twist: he gave it away before he ever released it himself. Peter Noone, the former lead singer of Herman's Hermits, recorded a version that hit the UK Top 10 in 1971 and introduced the song to a mainstream audience while Bowie's own profile was still building. Bowie's version appeared on his Hunky Dory album later that same year, and while the album is now considered an absolute classic, it sold modestly at the time and didn't produce major chart hits on its own. The song essentially flopped in Bowie's hands while succeeding in someone else's. It took years of retrospective critical reassessment, combined with the enormous commercial explosion that came with Ziggy Stardust and Aladdin Sane, before Hunky Dory got the audience it deserved. Today, Oh You Pretty Things is recognized as a genuinely visionary piece of songwriting Nietzschean philosophy dressed up as a pop song, which is an almost absurd achievement. The fact that it had to travel through a former teen idol before finding its rightful place in music history is exactly the kind of strange detour that makes Bowie's early career so fascinating to trace. He was writing songs that the world wasn't quite ready for, and he knew it, and he kept going anyway. Something Stupid. Most people know Something Stupid as the Frank and Nancy Sinatra duet, the warm, slightly awkward father-daughter recording that hit #1 in 1967 and became one of the most charming pop moments of the decade. But the song was written and first recorded by C. Carson Parks, who released it with his wife Gail Foote in 1966 under the name Carson and Gail. It made essentially no impact. The recording was gentle and earnest, but it didn't have the machinery behind it to go anywhere. And without a major label push, it simply disappeared into the enormous volume of music being released in that era. Then, Nancy Sinatra heard it, brought it to her father, and the two of them recorded it almost as a spontaneous experiment. The result topped charts on both sides of the Atlantic and became a defining moment for both Sinatras. Parks received his royalties and his songwriting credit, which is genuinely more than many original artists got in that era. But the irony remains sharp. He wrote one of the most beloved pop songs of the 1960s, and almost nobody knows his name. The original recording is worth finding, not because it rivals the Sinatra version, but because you can hear exactly where the song came from before the star power transformed it into something bigger than its own bones. Son of a Preacher Man. The original plan was for Aretha Franklin to record Son of a Preacher Man. The song was written specifically with her in mind, sent to her team, and turned down reportedly because Franklin felt uncomfortable with the lyrics' religious undertones given her own gospel background. So it went to Dusty Springfield instead, who released it in 1968 and took it into the top 10 on both sides of the Atlantic.
We gathered around and started talking. Listen, Billy would take me walking. I threw the back.
Then Quentin Tarantino used it in the opening scene of Pulp Fiction in 1994, and an entirely new generation discovered it simultaneously.
Billy Ray was a preacher's son, and when his daddy would visit, he'd come along.
The song has now outlasted nearly everything from its era in terms of cultural presence, which makes the original rejection feel almost cosmically ironic. What Springfield brought to the recording was a particular kind of longing, that slightly smoky, emotionally exposed quality that made her one of the finest vocalists of the decade. She didn't just sing the song, she inhabited it in a way that made it feel autobiographical, even though it wasn't. Franklin eventually recorded her own version after the Springfield recording became a hit, acknowledging implicitly that she had misjudged it the first time around. That rarely happens to an artist of Franklin's stature, essentially admitting that she passed on something she should have taken. The song made the right journey to the right voice, even if the route was unexpected. A whiter shade of pale.
Truth is plain to see.
This song is one of the strangest success stories of the entire decade, and the strangeness starts immediately. Released in 1967, A Whiter Shade of Pale has lyrics that are genuinely difficult to parse references to Chaucer, mythological imagery, a narrative that seems to dissolve before it resolves, and yet it reached #1 in the UK and became one of the best-selling singles of the year. On paper, it should not have worked. It's long, it's slow, it's built on a Bach-inspired organ line, and nobody in the song seems entirely sure what's happening. But something in that combination, the organ, the voice, the sense of woozy, dreamlike uncertainty hit the cultural moment of 1967 perfectly. It arrived in the summer that Sgt. Pepper changed everything, when audiences were actively looking for music that felt like it meant something deeper than the surface. And Procol Harum delivered something that felt deep, even if the depth was partly an illusion. The band initially struggled to follow it up and spent years being defined almost entirely by this one recording. What they created almost accidentally was a song that rewarded repeated listening, not because it revealed new meaning each time, but because the mystery never quite resolved. And that unresolved quality is exactly what kept people coming back. If you gotta go, go now.
But if you got to go, go now.
Bob Dylan wrote this song in 1964 and recorded it, but then decided not to release it officially. The reason, reportedly, was that the lyric was too blunt, a man telling a woman to either come home with him tonight or leave entirely. And Dylan wasn't sure how it would land publicly. So it sat unreleased while Manfred Mann picked it up, recorded their own version, and took it to number 2 in the UK in 1965. The song became one of Manfred Mann's signature tracks, and Dylan's original recording circulated only as a bootleg for years. When Dylan finally released his version officially decades later, it arrived as a historical curiosity rather than a revelation. The world had already decided whose version this was. What makes this story genuinely interesting is what it says about Dylan's instincts at the time. He wrote a song direct enough to make even him uncomfortable, handed it off almost accidentally, and then watched someone else score a major hit with the thing he was too cautious to release himself. Manfred Mann had a particular gift for taking Dylan material and making it accessible without defanging it completely. And this song is probably the clearest example of that skill. The original is rawer and funnier, but the Manfred Mann version is the one that earned its place in the charts and in the decade's memory. Respect. Before Aretha Franklin turned Respect into an anthem, before it became one of the defining songs of the civil rights movement and second-wave feminism, before it was literally inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame, it was an Otis Redding record that most people shrugged at. Redding wrote and recorded it in 1965, releasing it as a straightforward plea from a man asking for basic acknowledgement from his partner when he comes home. It charted modestly, got some attention in the R&B world, and then faded.
All over the world, I demand respect. Yes, I do.
Redding himself reportedly performed it live with genuine passion, but the recording never broke through to the wider audience it deserved. Then Aretha Franklin recorded her version in 1967, flipped the gender dynamic entirely, added those spine-tingling backup vocals, and spelled out R-E-S-P-E-C-T, like she was filing a legal document. The song became a #1 hit and a cultural earthquake. What's fascinating is that Redding reportedly watched this happen in real time and acknowledged, somewhat graciously, that Franklin had taken his song to a place he never imagined. He understood that she hadn't just covered it, she had completely reinvented it. The original is still a great record, raw and direct in the way only Redding could deliver. But it took a different voice, a different moment, and a different meaning to make the world finally stop and listen, twist and shout. Most people hear twist and shout and think of the Beatles. That's understandable. The Beatles version is one of the most electrifying recordings in rock history, captured in a single take with John Lennon's voice already shredded from a cold. But here's the thing, the Beatles didn't write it, and they weren't even close to the first to record it. The Isley Brothers released the original in 1962, and it went almost nowhere. The label wasn't behind it, the timing fell off, and the song got swallowed up by a crowded market that wasn't paying attention. Then the Beatles covered it in 1963 and the world lost its mind. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know where the song came from, and the Isley Brothers finally got their moment just 2 years later and riding someone else's wave. What's remarkable is that the original recording holds up completely on its own terms. The energy, the rawness, the vocal performance, none of it needed the Beatles to validate it. It just needed the right ears at the right time. And unfortunately, those ears arrived wearing mop-top haircuts. The Isley Brothers went on to have a genuinely remarkable career, but this song's journey from ignored to iconic remains one of the strangest origin stories in pop music history. Somebody to Love Jefferson Airplane released Somebody to Love in 1967, and it became one of the defining songs of the Summer of Love. Climbing to number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 and introducing Grace Slick to the world as one of the most commanding voices in rock. But here's the part most people don't know. Grace Slick didn't write it, and the song had already existed for a year without making any real impact. It was written by Slick's then brother-in-law, Darby Slick, and first recorded by his band, The Great Society, in 1966. That version went essentially nowhere. The Great Society were a San Francisco band with genuine talent, but no commercial reach, and the song circulated locally without ever breaking out. Then Grace Slick joined Jefferson Airplane, brought the song with her, and recorded it with a band that had the profile and the label support to push it into the mainstream. The arrangement was tightened, the production sharpened, and Slick's vocal performance turned what had been an interesting song into something genuinely ferocious. The original Great Society recording is fascinating to listen to. Now you can hear the bones of what the song would become, the DNA that Slick carried with her into a different room and transformed. Darby Slick received his songwriting credit and royalties, but the song belongs to the version most people heard, which means it belongs to a woman who didn't write it, but understood it better than anyone. That's 10 songs from the 1960s that the world almost missed entirely. Some were ignored, some were rejected, some just needed a different voice or a different year to finally land the way they were always supposed to. What's wild is that in every single case, the song itself was already great. It just hadn't found its moment yet. Music history is full of near misses like these, and it makes you wonder how many great songs never got their second chance. Let us know in the comments which story surprised you the most, and we'll see you in the next one.